Hello and welcome to Fiber Trek. You'll notice that I am alone this week. We had just had funny schedules, and Morgan had bits and pieces to do this evening that she couldn't postpone, and so I decided I would just move forward and get something out there for you all. It's going to be probably a little bit of a short episode, so we'll just kick things off with our typical introduction, which is our welcome. So welcome to new and returning viewers. So glad that you've decided to take some time and check out the podcast. I am Swensty on Ravelry and Fiber Trek TV on Instagram, and that's typically where I hang out for social media. I do have a Facebook page, which is Fiber Trek, and I predominantly use that to post links to the releases of the episodes. Yeah. This week we're going to cover the welcome, works in progress, and I have a Textiles in time and a fond farewell. I'm preparing for a shoot on Saturday, so I've got a little bit of time. I need to organize myself in with that. So this week, Part and Pack introduced herself on the boards, and she is from North Carolina near Three Waters Farm. She's thinking about spinning. Wanted to know how deep the rabbit hole was, and I was like, I don't know, I'm still hurling down the rabbit hole myself. So I would encourage you to start spinning and run down to Three Waters Farm and not only grab their wonderful soap, but also grab some of their beautiful, wonderful fleece and fiber and gorgeous color and jump. So she had also posted in her introduction a link about red wools in North Carolina and the Appalachians, and I think Morgan's going to use that article as part of our Megafauna Minute series on wolves. So I'm really psyched to get that link. Thank you so much. Transplanted Spud from Arizona is Anna. She predominantly works on small projects with bright colors, but she so appreciates the earthy, toothy yarns that we are featuring. I need to branch out on this podcast. Her ultimate trek is to Iceland, and she is interested in learning more about the traditions of the American Southwest. And that is an area of textiles that I am fascinated by, and I don't know a lot about. I have about 2,200 yards of a DK sport weight Navajo churro, but the Navajo churro were bred here in Maine. It's a particular flock that has been cultivated for about 20 years now. It's a very different type of fleece than I think what was being produced or is produced currently with the indigenous flocks of the American Southwest. However, I have aspirations of making my way there, of course, and getting to Tahoe's Sheep and Wool Festival, and looking at some of the Asazi history of the weaving and etc. So, yes. Disney cast. I know I'm a little bit off today, and I'm sorry. I think I feel like my arm's been cut off because Morgan's not here, so I'm so used to, So just bear with me as I solo it here. Disney cast introduced herself on the boards. She had actually emailed or PM'd me on Rav with some words of encouragement about the idea and the podcast, and I'm so glad she finally took some time to introduce herself. She loves Colin Firth. Seemed to be a running theme for a lot of the comments that were coming through about last week's episode, and she recommended Outlander, the book by Diana Gabaldon. And I have been a long-time subscriber to the tribe of Outlander. This is my book right here. And it has traveled 6 addresses with me, 3 countries. This thing has been everywhere. It's kind of like a security blanket. It's a book I can reread and feel like everything's going to be okay. So if you haven't had a chance to read Outlander, it is a great combination of historical fiction and romance. It is explicit and as Jasmine of the Knitmore Girls likes to warn, is not for children or young adult reading. So, but it is one of my favorites and one of my go-tos. And it's about Scotland and men in kilts and whiskey, and so sign me up. So I am rereading that right now in anticipation of the series that is being released on Starz, and Morgan is currently scheming on how we can watch that because we don't have TV here, so wish us luck. We're going to be looking forward to that next week. I also heard from Hollyberry. She's heading to Starcroft Mill right now to pick up her Nash Island fleeces. And Starcroft was one of the elements that we featured in our first full-length Fiber Trek episode, which you can find in the videos on the Fiber Trek YouTube channel. And so it also features Mary Jane Mucklestone, and I'm just so psyched that she is going to be working with the raw. I don't know if it's a raw fleece or if it's going to be processed, but I asked her to post pictures and to chat a little bit about her experience with that fleece in the thread. So she loves long wools and grays. She's come to the right place, and her ultimate fiber trick is to Gotland and Sweden. So welcome. Thank you so much for introducing yourself on the boards. I would encourage anybody who's a member of the group to go ahead and just put themselves out there and tell us a little bit of your story. And it's just a great way. I love to see all the different geography areas of the country. I'm so sorry. I want to just hit rewind, but I have a feeling I'm just going to have to roll this out. Thanks, bad dogs. Let's just go to works in progress. See if I can talk about my knitting with clarity. Probably not. So I have been working on the Good No sweater by Bonnie Sennett. Rats, dog hair. Dropped my ball of yarn on the ground. Curses. It's one of the... I have to just accept it, right? If I just keep resisting it, it will always be my arch nemesis. So I have done quite a bit. I finished the back. This is knit in one piece. So here it is in one piece. So you bind off for the back, and then you knit up the side. So this is the armhole right here. Right there. Hello. And you knit up the side. You can see that cable. My little hedgehog stitch markers from Scary to Mary. So I'm going to knit this up, and I'm actually going to knit it about half the width longer than the neck. And then this side as well, we'll do that. That'll seam, and then you pick up your stitches and you work your sleeves down from the armhole. So this has actually gone quite quickly. I got, as you know, quite a bit of it done while I was traveling, and the sides I'm only working on a series of smaller stitches, so it's not taking very long at all. I'm using a size 7 needle, which is 4.5 millimeter. I said it was from Bonnie Sennett. The yarn is an alpaca bamboo blend from Northern Solstice Alpaca Farm, which I picked up at the Highlands and the Fly Retreat last year, and they're coming back this year. So I'm excited to see them. I've also cast on and have been working on my Vedbeck shawl by Karina Westerman, and she, in our last episode, made a generous offer for people wishing to knit this or buy the pattern. I highly recommend that you do. It's a very comforting knit, and I'm in the middle of a row here, but here it is. It's hard to see. I'll hold it back and I'll bring it close. This is the Snalden Faroese Falkland yarn, and I don't know if it's going to be able to pick up these slip stitches. And this wool is worth investigating and picking up a skein or two. It has a very distinct smell, which I find very comforting, and I'm really enchanted with the texture and the ability of the yarn. So I feel like the yarn is I said this before, it's got like durability and resilience, but it also, there is a luxury about it. And remember where that's coming from, you know. But I think that this yarn has, I will wear this next to the skin and be perfectly content. It is not scratchy in any way, but it definitely holds its own. It has, there's structure to it. So those were better adjectives this time around. So I'm really, really excited about this. I don't need to look at the pattern to knit it. So I can just, wherever I am, whip this out and be completely comforted. Y'all know I'm working on a stocking. There was a great podcast about this particular pattern from Prairie Girls Knit and Spin with Prairie Girl Danny and Prairie Girl Susie, who are both working on it. And serendipitously, I happened to be working on this when I was listening to the podcast. And I was like, this is a sign. Prairie Girl Susie was contemplating whether or not she should continue. And that's right where I found myself at the same time. Sorry, Fern is going to be barking because somebody happens to be pounding on metal outside. So here it is. I had to rip out I had to add an inch and I had to rip it out because I forgot to start the increases for the gusset. I feel like this thing, that's why we call it the Megatron, because it looks massive. But according to Morgan and my husband, who doesn't want a big stocking? So I'm going to continue to work on it. Stonehenge fiber mill, and I'm doing this on a size, let's see, that's my phone ringing. I think it's size 5, 3.75. The author of the pattern is Doreen Giordano, and it is called A New Family Portrait. So, and that is it for works in progress. I have not worked on the stuffy for my nephew. I have not worked on my 34th and 8th mittens by Spilly Jane. I have not, I think that's it. I think that's all that's been cast on. So I have not done any spinning. I have been working on the Vedbeck and my sweater, and I've had some other planning that's had to happen in the evenings. So, but I would like to get back to my spinning. And now we are ready for Textiles in Time. So this is take 3 of Textiles in Time. I noticed on my last recording, the camera was like right here, and I was like, people don't want to see that. It was a little uncomfortable, little personal space thing going on, so I thought I would re-record. As you can see, I've lost my light, I've changed my shirt, I've had dinner, I've done my exercise, the dogs have settled, I hope. The witching hour has passed. And I just thought I would put together, or just give you a little insight into the indigo plant. I'm getting ready to do a shoot with a natural dyer on Saturday, Marcia McDonald of Long Plains Alpaca. And in Textiles in Time, I decided I really did not want to take the chronological route. And so instead, I've been trying to find inspiration, whether in my daily life or Fiber Trek, things that we're doing there, take a topic out and then trace it, you know, create a context for that topic in time, chronologically. So for this week, I thought I would do indigo, and not Indigo Montoya, but indigo the plant. It has a fairly prominent history because of the color blue. Color blue had a number of political and religious overtones, prominence, resonance. Most striking and probably most familiar would be the Virgin Mary in Christianity. Jesus' mother is often depicted in blue because of the importance of that color. We also see the Hindu god Krishna depicted in the color blue. And we also see, this would be where my 9th grade World Civ class would perk up their ears. The Mayan culture often painted their human sacrifices blue. And they were deriving this color from the indigo plant. There's two main species of the 300 in the leguminous plant family. We're looking at Indigo fera, and specifically Tinctoria, which is the Indian and Asian species, and Suffretosia, which is the Central and South American species. Both of those colors, both of those plants have been used to derive the color blue. Now, the process of extracting that color, I'm not going to get into. I think it holds its own mystique even today for me. And it has to do with the fermentation. The color is mainly coming from the leaves. So this Textiles in Time is more about some of the, the past history of it and how it pretty much, one of interest to me was its shift from India to South Carolina and why that route kind of happened. So we can date indigo garments probably further back, but what I found that was actually corroborated was excavation at the site of Thebes, and those garments were dated to 2500 BC. Herodotus mentions it in written documentation in 450 BC, and of course we know that there have been human sacrifices painted with it with the Mayan culture. So it has a long-standing history, and it became a force because of its blue capabilities. Blue is not a color that's found often or for extraction in nature. The other plant that is used to do that is woad, but you get very different results. And so indigo has a long-standing, high-quality, high-color element to it that woad just doesn't have. So really, the Asian and Indian cultivars were being carried along the spice trails, but they really didn't enter Europe until 1498. And the important component of that is when the opening of a sea route happened between India and Europe. In 1598, indigo was prohibited in France and parts of Germany, and that's that woad indigo resistance. So the woad growers in Europe, seeing this influx of excellent dye, began to kind of put a lot of political pressure on it. But it didn't last very long, and by the 17th century, the chief articles of trade for the Dutch and the British was indigo, bringing that into Europe. There was conjecture that the textiles industry in Europe, the Indian indigo production could not supply, and so the forays into the colonies, both Central, South, and North America, was not only to look for new resources, but look for opportunity to grow, resources for trade back. So we know that the Spanish and the French both had indigo interests in the West Indies as well as in Central America. The Spanish cultivated plantations of indigo in Honduras and the Pacific slopes of Central America, and the French colony of Saint Domingo was a major producer of the dye as well. That was the largest producer of the dye and supposedly the best quality. So how does indigo come to North America, and specifically the area of South Carolina, which became the major exporter for the U.S., and prior to it being the U.S.? So Eliza Lucas Pinckney was a resident of South Carolina, and her father was the governor of Antigua. And his forays into the West Indies, the Caribbean, and the trade routes in that area obviously lended itself to gathering indigo seeds and learning about that. So he sent seeds back to Eliza, and she, through a series of trials, instigated a crop of indigo for shipment to England through a series of years. This initial shipment was approved by the English, and that set into motion a major indigo explosion into South Carolina. So the late 1740s, it peaked in 1773, and that year they shipped and exported out to England 1,107,660 pounds of indigo. And as these other exporters, I mean, I wouldn't say it was a world dominance of indigo, but it was definitely participating in that indigo trade coming out of the West Indies and Central America. So it was it was its own force, and it was a major crop for South Carolina, rice and indigo. Now, the downfall of indigo really comes in 1897 when a synthetic version is introduced. And at that point, the natural plant that crop is pretty much obliterated as far as its commercial value. What we use today, people still grow it, they extract it, you can buy it in a number of different forms, sellable forms, but I don't know a lot about the plant and how to use it and etc. So that's what I'm hoping in Fiber Track we're going to see a little bit. I think she's going to prepare an indigo vat. We had talked about it. So here we have this plant to reckon with, and I read a really wonderful book by Michael Pollan called Botany of Desire, and he catalogs 4 plants and how, sorry I did that sound, plants actually rule us, and through our desires for color, sweetness, and beauty, we have actually proliferated specific plants to their benefit. I think he catalogs the apple, the potato, marijuana, and the tulip. But indigo and tea are both other contenders for that world trade, and what people, tobacco, cotton, and how people have used that politically and religiously, and wars, slavery, all of that combines into these plant cultivars. So very interesting stuff. The information I gathered for this very kind of shallow look at indigo was from the University of Minnesota, Indigo in the Early Modern World by Ann Matson. And I wasn't looking to be comprehensive, but I just thought to give a little isn't that interesting about indigo and the dye that we derive from that. The only last thing I would say, which is just interesting to take to the next dinner party, is that Romans used the ink and they called it indigum. So it has it had a number of uses, not only for expression but also for actual what's the word I'm looking for here? It eludes me. It's not just to wear on your clothing, but it also had productive or practical uses. So I'm going to do a fond farewell. Sorry about the lighting, but I figured I didn't need to show you any projects. I did want to mention the knit-along. It's kind of an impromptu knit-along. I think I called the Serendipitous Knit-along on the Ravelry board. If you haven't joined our Ravelry group, please do. We'd love to have you over there. It's the Vedbeck. I believe that Granny Sheep is knitting it. I'm knitting it. Morgan's casting it on. I had another person from the board. She bought the pattern and she's going to cast on. I can't remember who she is, but go on, get that pattern. I know that the offer is still available, and I think it is. She didn't give me a deadline. And think about if there's something in your stash that you might want to use for that. It's been a really fun knit. So Morgan will be back next time, I hope, and I will see you next week. Bye.